We've got a series of 3 speakers today, all of which are have very important messages. As we all know, the honeybees are in a lot of trouble, and they're problems we can face and we can fix, but we have to have a new way of thinking about beekeeping. And I can't think of 3 better people to exemplify that new way of thinking about beekeeping. So I'd like to introduce Dwight Wells. He's with the Heartland Bee Breeders Cooperative. He's with Buckeye Queen Producers.
He's with Ohio.
Beekeepers Association.
Ohio State Beekeepers.
He's kind of interested in bees and passionate about it. So I'm just going to turn the floor over to Dwight Wells.
Thanks, Dave. How many people in here are beekeepers? How many people are getting into beekeeping? Because I know that you have, okay, that's what I thought. Great, fantastic. We always need new beginning beekeepers. And the younger you are, the better I like you. In our West Central Ohio Beekeeping Club, which is West Coba. So I'm going to say West Coba for West Central Ohio Beekeepers Association. HHBBC is Heartland Honeybee Breeders Cooperative. Ohio State Beekeeping Association is OSBA. I think that's it. In West Coba, our youngest member is 5 years old, has her own colony of bees. I am starting to mentor a 4-year-old. I have several young kids that I'm mentoring. So you can never be, well, you could be a little bit too young, but typically 4 or 5 years old, you can have your own colony. As long as your parents are around to help you who are beekeepers, you can do a good job with them. My talk today is basically about the Heartland Honeybee Breeders Cooperative, but I'm going to start with getting you all on the same page so that you understand what I'm going to be talking about. Like Dave mentioned, I started beekeeping in 1954 when I was 14 years old. Yes, I'm 74 years old this month. I bought my package from Harvey York through the Sears and Roebuck Farm Catalog, installed the bees. They did wonderful. That was 1954 in western Pennsylvania, out in the country, on a dairy farm. You can't do that in today's world for a lot of different reasons. Here are what you have to do in today's world to be a successful beekeeper. You have to have a good, healthy colony, and you can do that. With the research that we have today at our fingertips, you can have a healthy colony. It's going to take work, as you're going to see here in a minute. You're going to treat honeybees just like you do your farm animals. How many people here are on the farm, have been raised on the farm, and understand animal husbandry? How many? How many people have dogs or cats? That's a form of animal husbandry. You may not know it, but that's animal husbandry. If you're a beekeeper, you're in animal husbandry. And you have to treat your bees like you would a dairy cow. Anyway, there's problems with genetics. We're going to talk to that. We have some problems with queen and drone health problems. We have problems with chemicals, with the pesticides and fungicides. And I'm not here to beat the drum against chemicals. Farmers have to do what they have to do. It's our responsibility to keep our bees as far away from chemicals as we possibly can. Nutrition is a major problem in today's world. There's issues with the Sunbelt honeybees from Georgia and Florida. There's a lot of problems with beekeeper training in today's world because there's a lot of new beginning beekeepers. And it takes about 3 to 5 years to get a person to really understand beekeeping, all facets of it. So those of you who are getting into beekeeping now, be patient with yourself. The bees will be patient with you as long as they don't die from your mistakes. The varroa mite, which you'll see a picture of in a minute, is our number 1 enemy. And I'll talk to that. There's another issue with nosema that you have to monitor and you have to control. And number 10, you've got to overwinter nukes that you're going to create. Nukes. What's a nuke? Nuke is abbreviation for nucleus. Nucleus colony is a small colony with a new queen. and you have to be able to overwinter successfully so you have it the following spring. In case your older colonies die out, you still have a backup colony without buying packages from the south. Number 9 is a major issue. Most beekeepers tend to be introverted and like to go out and be with their bees. And they really don't enjoy going to large club meetings and talking to strangers. That's an issue. In today's world, you have to be able to network. Now, all this network in one way or the other, whether it's through church, through school, your friends, your relatives, your neighbors, whatever, you have a small network. But when you get serious about beekeeping, you've got local networks, local club, regional, state, and national. And depending on how much time you have and the resources you have, defines how far you go. But I encourage you, you have got to talk to other beekeepers and network so that you can help each other solve your problems. That's a major issue. I used to be introverted, but because of my past work history, I forced myself to be a networker and be a little on the extroverted side. I dwell on the network of influence. You have got to communicate with each other. You have to go to a club. How many people here belong to a beekeeping club? Okay, the rest of you have got to figure out where your local beekeeping clubs are that are sustainable beekeeping clubs. Sustainable beekeeping clubs. And if you don't have one, start your own. I did 4 years ago. It works. There's sustainable animal husbandry. There's the female sheep, the mother. There's the lambs. Back here, maybe you can't see it very well, there are over 100 female calves that are about 3 months old. Let me see. Sustainable. Calves, lambs. We have, in the world of beekeeping, we have nukes. That nuke there is about 2 months old with a brand new queen. And she came from a good trait line. This colony here is about 4 or 5, it's 4 years old as a colony. The trait line goes back several years. That's one of mine in my backyard. If something happens to that queen, heaven forbid, I can replace it with that nuke. That's sustainable beekeeping. That's probably the number one thing you can do to help yourself, is to have nukes. Overwinter them, so in case you would lose a colony like this one, you don't have to buy packaged bees. Brief history of Ohio. 1620, when the Pilgrims arrived at Plymouth, they assumed there would be honeybees in North America. They were wrong. 1622, they brought the first German black bees over from England. 1788, bees arrived in Ohio before it was a state. 1922, the USDA stopped the importation of honeybees because of some issues with some parasites. So for 300 years, we brought in to North America about 8 different races of bees. That stopped in 1922, which created a bottleneck of genetics. 1987, our nemesis, the varroa mite, arrived in the U.S. In 88, beekeepers started using chemicals to kill mites. Up to that time, if somebody told us that we were going to use chemicals on our bees, we would laugh. You're crazy. Some people now are using a lot of chemicals to kill the mites on their bees and having some problems. 1997, about 95% of all feral colonies in North America were killed by the mites. In Ohio, prior to that time, we had about 44,000 feral colonies. In today's world, we might have 2,000. That has created a problem with our gene pools. We formed, in 2013, we formed the HHBBC out of Purdue University. I made a comment to Dan O'Hanlon, and we took off with it. And This year, we had our first event at Purdue to create breeder queens for 4 different states: Pennsylvania, Ohio, Indiana, and West Virginia. We've already got the date set for next year. It's June the 10th through the 13th. Now, a little bit about biology of honeybees. There's an egg. Queen just laid an egg, turns into a larva. There's some pictures of some larvae there. You'll see a better picture in a minute. Pupa goes from egg, larva, pupa, emerges an adult bee. 3 days as an egg, 6 days as larva, 12 days as a pupa. It emerges either as a worker, a drone, or a queen. Workers are undeveloped females. Drones are males. Queens is a fertilized bee. Here you'll see, here it again. Egg, day-old larva, about a 2-day-old larva. There's a 3-day-old larva. They grow very rapidly. And here's the issue. During this growth period of the larva, the nurse bees have to have protein, which is pollen, or bee bread, and honey, which is carbohydrate, to make royal jelly. Farm animals like dairy cattle need silage and ensilage, fermented hay or corn, to eat for better nutrition. Human beings eat sauerkraut, yogurt, that's fermented food. Honeybees, it's bee bread. The bees bring in the pollen, and they mix it with honey and some of their enzymes in their stomachs, and 14 days later they have bee bread. They have to have that in order to make the royal jelly for the larva. In today's world, there's a problem starting about now. Well, this year is a little bit different because of all the rain we've had. Typically in the late summertime, we have problems with nutrition, and the bees basically start to starve the larva. Because of that, the larvae have a problem developing the winter bees to survive the winter, which is another story. Okay, here's the relationship between the honeybee and the flower. They depend on each other to exist in the world. There's about 170 different species of flowers that are pollinated by honeybees around the world. 80% of the plants worldwide are pollinated by insects of some sort. There's the wind pollinator. You have the wheat and the corn, things like that. They're wind pollinated. There's the fruit trees. Most of them are pollinated by honeybees. And a single colony will visit several million flowers every day. Here's the relationship, true relationship. The flower depends on the pollinator to set seed to perpetuate itself. Okay, the seed is eaten by pheasants, grouse, quail, a lot of different insects or birds. They depend on that relationship. We do too. Humans depend on the flowers and the honeybees to maintain our diet for vegetables and fruit. We have better health in today's world than we did 200 years ago because of the honeybees pollinating fruit and our vegetables. Of course, I told you about the honeybee and the pollinator as far as the nectar and pollen to produce royal jelly for the larva. So we all exist together in this world in one way or the other because of the pollinators, not just the honeybees, the bumblebees, the butterflies, the moths, the bats. There's about 10 different major pollinators. That some of them we don't see. The moths pollinate at night, as an example. Genetics, major issue in today's world. We have to have locally adapted bee stock in Ohio. It's like going to Florida and buying a palm tree and bringing it up here and planting it and wondering why next spring the palm tree is dead. Gee, why did that palm tree die? Oh, I'll go down to Florida again, find that palm tree, bring it up here, plant it again. Next spring, it's dead again. That's what's happening with the southern bees in today's world. And I'm not picking on the southern package people. They're trying to do the best they can, but there's some issues. There are the different stocks that we have today. Within those stock lines, we have the basic lines, the races we have today are the Italians, fundamentally, the Carleolans that evolved on the south side of the Alp Mountains in Europe. We do have some Russians from a certain area of Russia that are a variation of Carleolans. We have the Caucasian stock from around the Russian border with Soviet Republic of Georgia. Well, it's the Republic of Georgia now since Russia doesn't control it. And then we have survivor stock. Dan and I and some other folks, we have what we call survivor stock, have lived 3-5 winters because of their traits that have locally adapted to our areas.
What does VHSH stand for?
Varroa sensitive hygiene. You'll see that in a minute. I'll speak to that. We have beekeepers in today's world have got to proactively manage their local gene pool. Queens mate while they're flying. And due to that fact, we have to control and manage to make sure we have diversity in an area of about a radius of 4 miles, which is a lot of miles within that area. They've got to have good diversity and lots of drones flying in order to mate. A queen needs to mate with around 15 to 25 drones to be successful in her ability to keep the colony perpetuating itself in the future, which is a major problem in today's world because we don't have the feral colonies we had at one time. Healthy bees, healthy queens and drones. There's a queen cell. I don't have, could somebody run out and get the logo for HHBBC? It's laying out there someplace. This is a frame, or you can't see it, but what I'm showing here is a lot of queen cells there that the bees are taking care of. And I blew on this cell here to show what the cell looks like. There's a queen that's in the pupa stage right now. It's sealed, so she's pupating. And from the time the egg is laid until she emerges as queen, it's 16 days. There's the queen. It's on the logo. Her name is Hope. She made it through the winter. The story of that queen, Crispin Gibbon, a technician out at the Purdue University, grafted some larvae for Dan. He took it down to West Virginia, produced some queens. He gave 2 queens to me and Joe Kovaleski last summer at the Heartland Apicultural Society meeting in Cookeville, Tennessee. Took them home and had a young kid up in Bell Center graft. And that's the product, that's the result. We had 3 gene pools involved. Purdue's gene pool, Dan's gene pool down in West Virginia, and our gene pool up in northern Logan County. And this is the logo here of the Heartland Honeybee Breeders Club. And this is Hope. That is a beautiful looking queen with good stock. We are all very proud of that bee. She's a Carleolan mixture, buckfast mixture, mutton line mixture, this and that mixture of 3 different gene pools in 3 different states. That's why we started HHBBC, to start producing better genetics for the beekeepers in the 4 states that we're working with right now. We have 4 states involved. We're going to be careful about adding new states until we get our act together, because we're only 1 year old. We've got to be careful if we want to keep the genetics under our control in order to provide good stock for beekeepers in those 4 states. There's a drone. We're having problems with drones, typically in numbers right now, and the genetics. We don't have enough of them flying around the earth. There's our number 1 issue. That's the varroa mite. It has caused more problems to the bees than anything else in the last 30 years. Keep your eye on, those are the legs. Keep your eye on those legs. You'll see why in a minute. Now it gives you an idea, the size of the mite versus the size on the drone. That's a drone in the purple wide stage as a pupa. there's an adult bee with a mite on it. Mites bite the bees, which cause a virus infection in the bees. Proportionally, if we had those mites on our bodies, it'd be about this big, and they'd be running around our bodies, biting our bodies, opening up wounds on our skin. Well, we could go to the doctor or emergency room or get them taken care of. Bees can't. We have viruses surrounding us here in this room. We're healthy. We're fighting off the viruses. They're healthy as long as they're not being bitten by the mites. They have viruses in their colonies too. But when the mites start biting the bees, that's where we have problems with viruses, which is a major problem. Okay, here we go with Purdue University. Dr. Greg Hunt, 1997, started the Purdue Honeybee Stock Improvement Program. He had a brother in Cleveland who had a colony of bees that had survived several years. And Greg's brother gave him that colony. He took it to Purdue, started working on the Stock Improvement Program. Greg is one of the best geneticists in the world. Fortunately, we have him in Purdue University. He started figuring out that there were about 11 different grooming behaviors in bees. And he was able to focus on one that chewed the legs off the mites. Hence, they're called the Indiana lake chewers. I know there's bees in Ohio, they don't chew the legs off, they just bite the mites. So we have Ohio mite biters. It's another trait. So anyway, through about 5 years of a breeding program, he's up to about 50-60% able to chew the mites off chew the legs off the mites. We started the HHBBC in 2013. At the same time, he found a colony that had both the Varroa sensitive hygienic trait and the leg chewer trait in the same colony. And we have some of the genetics from that colony in 4 different states now. And then we started the HHBBC event out 2 weeks ago in Purdue, creating some breeder queens for the 4 states. Okay, here's what happens to the mites when the Indiana lake chewers get through them. Legs are missing. As soon as they chew the legs off the mites die. Very valuable to have that trait in your colonies. There's a logo. The reason we started the HHBBC, we have to have northern queen programs in the 4 states that have locally adapted stock. Now we can have the Cardiolans, we can have the Caucasians, we can have the Russians, we can have the Cardiolans, but they have to have the traits of being able to control the mites, one way or the other. We have to stop using chemicals in our colonies. It has got to stop. If we don't, we're going to keep on having problems. And I thank goodness that the USDA, the federal government, finally realized this year that we have a major problems with bees in the United States. And there's funding starting to happen. In fact, even I think it was last week that President Obama had come out with a statement about helping the honeybees in North America and the United States, which is great. We finally got some recognition that there are problems which we've known about for 30 years. When we formed the organization, Dan elected to do the newsletter, and he's a webmaster. There's our mission statement. It's very simple. Exchange information genetic between the honeybee queen producer programs and the northern states that have cooperated with the 4 of us. Now, having said that,
You got a question?
Yep. Yes.
Totally ignorant to beekeeping, but
No problem.
what I do know is for those that treat, that once you say stop treating for the mites, will you lose your colony then?
What you have to do before you stop treating is get some of the genetics that we're working on so that you have mite chewers or grow a sense of hygiene or some trait that will maintain a low population of mice in your colonies.
So you can introduce these leg chewers
That's
into your
correct.
colony?
Yes.
And then how do you
Then-
go about getting them?
Okay, I'll get to that in a minute.
Perfect, okay.
We have a solution to your problem, and it's very easy.
We're gonna-
Yep, we're gonna get there. So, we've talked about having problems with southern bees. They die early. They carry genetics that have poor tolerance to the varroa mites and the northern winters. And we have to redo our gene pools to get our gene pools to the point where they were 50 years ago. It's a tall order, but here's what we're going to do to answer your question.
Thank you.
We started the HHBBC with about 12 or 14, with 3 different states. This is an old organizational chart. I haven't added Pennsylvania yet. We had the breeders from Indiana, Ohio, West Virginia, under the HHBBC. We produce the genetics we need, bring them back to the individual states, give the breeder queens to the queen producers. They in turn produce production queens for the beekeepers in those 4 states. That's where you get your stock from. In Ohio, there's around 14 of us. West Virginia has the same number. Pennsylvania has about the same number, and Indiana has about the same number. So it's going to take a while, and you'll see here in a minute, for the breeder queens we just produced in Indiana at Purdue, get them through the system so they're laying eggs so that we can graft from them to produce queens for the beekeepers in those 4 states. There's the team. We spent 3 days, 11th, 12th, 13th, and 14th, 4 days. Those are the guys from the 4 states that worked together to produce the breeder queens. Dr. Monahes wasn't there. She had to go home. She's in my club in Western Ohio. Her PhD is in animal science, and she has a daughter in 2 different 4-H clubs, one in bees and one in dogs. And she had to be home on a Saturday afternoon to go to one of the club meetings. The other kid is Marlon Miller. He's an Amish kid. He, so far this year, he's produced about 300 queens up in northern Logan County. He's going crazy with queens right now. It is wonderful. In our club, I'll brag a little bit. In Western Ohio, our club has around 35 people that produce queens. And I've been working with Dr. Larry Connor for the last 2 years to get that accomplished. So now we have several people producing queens, so we can get queens within our club for our bees. And also, we're starting to ship bees out of state from our club. I think I've mentioned about all of that there. Here's the different queens that we took out to Purdue to be inseminated. The different varieties. You see some names there that people recognize. Sue Covey, Joe Lackshaw, here locally, has helped us. And then our donor drones were the Varroa Hygienic and the Indiana Lake Chewers. Here's the process that we had. Am I running out of time?
We need to go ahead and finish up somewhere, but we want to make sure we get everybody else in because we're going to switch over.
Okay. We had to do the research and selection of the queen and drone stock. We had to produce those queens, take them to Purdue, did the Purdue event, brought them back, introduced them to the new colonies, start producing production queens. Altogether, we had about 6,000 hours, labor hours, getting through this process. That's a lot of effort to do this, but it's well worth it. There's Dr. Hunt and Crispin is sitting down at the station. There's the workstation to produce the breeder queens. There's the portable nukes that we carried the queens back and forth. There's the queens that Dan is holding some of the queens that were in the cages. There's our first queen that we produced as a breeder queen out of this system. There's Purdue Queen, one of the yards of Purdue University. They have about 110 colonies with different varieties of Indiana Lake Cherries. We need your help. Here's how the non-beekeepers can help. You need to plant flowers, plants that pollinators, specifically honeybees, can get nectar and pollen from. That is so important. Anybody can plant a few more flowers. Somebody that has an acre, plant an acre of flowers to help the pollinators. Steve Jobs once said, the only way to do great work is to love what you do. And Christmas said, you know, I believe we all love what we did. Yeah.
So I have a question. I just lost a queen about a couple of weeks ago. I didn't know about you. If I need a queen, how do I get a hold of you, and how quickly can you get me the queen?
We are building a network of queen producers in Ohio. Through the Buckeye Queen Producers, we have a website. And there are people on our website. If you go to our website, if you just Google Buckeye Queen Producers, you'll get our website, and you'll find some people on that website where your closest people are that you can buy a queen, get a queen from. There, the end result is, it's one of my hives. She's a VSH girl, over winter. Happy bees, contented beekeepers. Thank you.